Everything I've ever learned about photography, I've learned by doing it wrong first. And fortunately, we're in the digital age where you can look at the back of a screen and see what you're doing wrong in the moment, and you can take 1,000 photos, and if they're all bad, you can just delete them. Like, can you imagine how hard it must have been to become a good photographer back in the days of film? You were just hoping your settings were right. You didn't find out until long after the photo what was right and what was wrong, and not to mention how expensive it must have been. You had to pay to develop every single shot to figure out what was working and what wasn't. Anyway, today I'm going to be sharing some photography mistakes that I used to make that I don't anymore. I have a very sad, needy kitty in here with me filming today. Had surgery to remove bladder stones, so she has a cone on. Thankfully, we found her a soft cone though that is way more comfortable than like a traditional cone, but she basically just demands that I scruff her under her cone all day long. So I'm multitasking today. I took all of my photos vertically. Is anyone else haunted by this? For years, I took all of my photos with the idea that I would be posting them to Instagram. So I shot everything vertically because the best aspect ratio for Instagram is vertical. When in hindsight, what I really should have been doing is shooting everything in a horizontal or landscape orientation, just keeping in mind that in post, I was going to want to crop into something vertical because that leaves me with a much more versatile image. It's a lot easier to take something horizontal and crop it into something vertical than to take a vertical image and try to get a horizontal crop out of it. Which I know traditionally this is called like portrait and landscape, but now I feel like those terms are almost confusing, especially with like portrait mode on phones and like portraits, I think of headshots. Like I know those are the traditional terms, but now I feel like horizontal and vertical is more like universally not confusing. Anyway, with a horizontal image, you can use that for a YouTube thumbnail or a blog banner. So now I only shoot vertically if the composition requires it. Like if I was shooting inside of a slot canyon or I was taking a picture of a tall waterfall. I didn't plan for the shot ahead of time. A lot of the amazing images you see on social media are very, very planned. Everything from the location, the composition, the time of day, and how the light is hitting the scene. If somebody's in the photo, what they're wearing, what colors they're wearing to complement the environment. And I didn't used to realize how much behind the scenes work goes into getting these photos. I had the mentality that I just had to show up with a camera and I'd get some great photos. This is a photo I took on a trip to Grand Teton National Park. I knew I wanted to get some nice shots of the mountains when I was planning this trip. And in my days with less photography experience, I probably would have just showed up somewhere around sunset when the light was softer and taken some photos of the peaks. But for this shot, I decided to do some research. I researched the best location to shoot from and the time of day, which is actually sunrise if you want to get that red glow on the peaks. And I wanted to get a time lapse of the light moving over the peaks, so I researched how long before sunrise do I need to start shooting to get that. So I woke up very, very early and drove into the park and walked down to the water where this spot was. And I was bundled up in the freezing cold to start this time lapse in the dark so that in the very brief few moments where the peaks turn red, I would get these images. And I know the average person who looks at this photo, like a non-photographer, doesn't see the amount of preparation that went into getting this image. Like if I showed it to a random person in my life, they would probably assume I was just walking or driving along and was like, oh, look how pretty the mountains look, snap. But that's not the case for most wow images. So now I do as much location research as I can before I go and shoot somewhere. Sometimes I'll go a day early and just scout it out. I'll use Google Street View to get an idea of what the area looks like. I try to get an idea of where sunrise and sunset are and what direction the light will be coming from at different times of the day so I know when I want to go shoot. If I'm going to be in the photo, because I do a lot of self-shooting, I'll think about what colors I should wear. The images you see on social media are not as spontaneous as they look, and if you want better images, you have to plan for them. I want to take a minute to say thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online community for creatives, and it's designed to make high-quality learning accessible. It's known for its classes and topics like photography, video editing, illustration, but it also has hundreds of career-focused classes on topics like productivity, time management, diversifying your income. I don't think there's ever been a better time to start building an online business or passive income, or to start freelancing and designing a career that fits you. I've been a freelancer for over a decade now, and it is so rewarding, and I can't imagine my life and my career any other way. And Skillshare's classes are aimed at people with creative career goals, and not just the big stuff, but the small goals too. Like maybe you want to maximize your productivity. This is definitely something I've struggled with as a freelancer. You should check out Thomas Frank's class, Productivity for Creatives, Build a System that Brings Out Your Best. In this class, he talks about how he uses Notion templates to streamline his video planning, and it has totally inspired me to do the same thing. So be sure to check it out, and the first 1,000 people who use the link down in the description will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare to explore your creativity. I focused too much on one subject or composition. So many times I've made the mistake of getting too fixated on one shot, one angle, one composition, one subject, that I miss all kinds of other photo opportunities around me. Like I would spend an entire golden hour shooting one shot, like one angle, and then oftentimes later I'd pull the photos into Lightroom and I'd realize this isn't actually as interesting as I thought it was. So now I force myself to keep moving. Unless I'm waiting for something like wildlife, where patience is what gets you that 1 in a million shot, I make myself move on. And this has started to serve me really well in my travels. I think about this photo I took in Namibia last year. In the past, at this location, I would have just focused on this tree. I would have thought this tree and the dune are the subject. But instead, after I got some shots of this, I forced myself to turn around, to look around, to maybe find some of the less obvious subjects. And I ended up getting some really cool shots of the cars parked on the road, which are actually some of my favorite of the trip. We went to Deadflay, which has the petrified trees, and instead of just focusing on the trees, which are the obvious subject here, I made sure to look around, and I caught some sand blowing off the tops of the dunes that looked really cool. I spotted this tiny speck of a hiker up on top of the dune in the distance. Got a shot of that. I didn't shoot in manual. For a long time, I was really intimidated by the idea of shooting in manual because I was worried that I would mess it up and miss the shot. But getting comfortable with shooting in manual has made me such a better photographer. My wildlife shots are so much better because I've learned just how fast my shutter speed needs to be with moving subjects to get those really crispy, clear photos. My time lapses have improved because I've gotten better at managing exposure with changing light. I've also gotten some really cool astrophotography shots. This is definitely something you cannot shoot in an automated setting. Learning to shoot in manual has opened up so many more situations that I now have the confidence to shoot, and I feel like I can shoot well. So those are some of the photography mistakes I used to make, and I'm pretty sure anyone who's ever picked up a camera has some mistakes of their own. So let me know what yours are down in a comment below. Thanks for watching. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next one.